Hey, everybody, and welcome to We've Got Issues. It is our weekly public conversation of what's been happening in our private group chat. And if you're watching the news, you know that those private group chats can be a little explosive these days. But we're making ours public on purpose. It's not an accident. And I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Nick Cates. I've got my man Ron Evans.
What's up? What's up?
And of course, Darin Gray.
What up, Doe?
Always repping the D. And who are we? We are a group of guys who've known each other for 40 years, and we are an extension of another set of friends who've known each other for 40 years or more in some cases. And we are kind of keep up with what's happening in the world, but we all have our eyes on what's important to us, personally, and wanting to offer our perspectives into the kind of world of ideas to see what you're thinking. And we believe that maybe what we're talking about, what we're thinking about, how we analyze what's happening in the world is relevant to you. And we'd love to hear back from you what you think about what our thoughts and feelings are about whatever. We talk about all kinds of subjects, from politics to personal relationships to finance to all kinds of things. And so you never know what you're going to get from episode to episode. So today we are going to be led in conversation by our good man, Darin Gray. And Darin, I'm going to let you take it away and talk about what's on your mind this week.
Well, what's on my mind this week is there is no spoon.
Mm-hmm.
There's a clip in the show notes about the Matrix, and there is no spoon. And what drew me to that was my net worth. So I've been trying to figure out my net worth. I have my financial advisor run some numbers this week, and I'm looking pretty good. And then, the tariffs hit, my 403 took a hit. And then I was reminded about the fires and, people's equity taking a hit. And then the $36 trillion debt and my Social Security taking a hit. My pension in California with the $100 billion deficit, that could take a hit. So I'm trying to manage my net worth. There's no spoon. The reality is, what resources can you deploy at any given moment and at any given time? Because that's all you have access to. Today, you can buy a car or buy a house, buy some food, take your wife out today. Tomorrow, that might not be the case. Cybersecurity hit, nation defaults, your net worth. So you're trying to manage your net worth, but there is no spoon. There's nothing there. So I'd rather be in the chair with the thing plugged in the back of my head where I can take it out and disengage than in the pod. Because when the Matrix collapsed, I'm in the ship ready to fight, as opposed to being in the pod with nothing. There is no spoon. All right, Ron, go ahead.
Please explain what he just said to me, Ron, because I'm a little bit like the analogy of there is no spoon. I'm still a little bit trying to get it. I know there's a Matrix, the Matrix tie-in is there, but please translate for me.
Nick, if only I could, because I don't get it either. I mean, I think that
look at your net worth. Your net worth is magic. It doesn't exist.
Absolutely, it exists. I mean, the net. If your thesis is my net worth has declined because of macroeconomic policies, which, by the way, in a previous episode you were all for. We can go back to that. Now that it impacts your net worth, somehow you are an aggrieved person that wants to unplug from the Matrix. But I digress. There is net worth because everything you have, be it real estate, which is harder to convert to cash, or marketable securities like stocks and bonds, are much easier to convert to cash. You can choose today, or really Monday when the market opens, to put all the chips, cash them all out, convert to cash, take the money and put it in a passbook account or crypto or whatever your fancy is, and you have purchasing power. So there is a spoon.
All right. So I hack the grid. There's no electricity. You don't
Oh
have
my
access
God.
to your computer. The economy has already collapsed. Your dollar is
Yeah.
worth nothing.
Yeah.
Your resources are what you can bring to bear. Can you
Mhm.
make stuff with your hand? Do you have water? Those are real. The matrix is we have this faith and confidence in ones and zeros that actually don't exist, and they're based on other people's perception of value. What real value is water. Like there's no perception. Without water, I die in 3 days. Food. So I am saying that your net worth isn't real. I mean, you still have to be, if you want to play in the matrix, you still got to play in the matrix. But you have to have a real sense of your future is dependent upon a whole bunch of things that are outside of your control. There is no
Okay.
spoon.
Okay. So
Let's let
there's a
Nick
couple.
go there right quick.
So
Yeah.
there's a couple things. This harks back to a conversation we had on the road in Dallas to the Alabama USC game, where it was basically, for those that don't know what we're talking about, there was an apocalyptic conversation. One of the books that I read, which is went through Congress at the time, is a book called 1 Second After. And the premise is there's an electromagnetic burst over North America that wipes out all of the microelectronics. So you can't get to your banks, you can't get to the CVS for insulin or anything that needs refrigeration because the refrigeration is done. You can't, people are raiding grocery stores. And to Darin's point, the only economy that's left are bullets and water. That's the currency that you can trade. And of course, society breaks down into factions and roving gangs. That is the most apocalyptic view, Darin, that you have to call upon to support your thesis, because that's
Gaza.
not the reality.
Gaza, it's a reality. Somalia, it's a reality. It's actually a reality all over the world. We just don't have that here. And we think that we're immune. There are places where that is the economy. When you look at Black Hawk Down during Somalia, there was an economy. There was the economy of bullets and water and food. It's real. We just live in this bubble because we think the US, it'll never happen here.
I'd like to jump in on this for a second, and I'd like to fall somewhere in the middle. I completely, now that you've kind of dug into it, I completely understand where you're coming from, Darin, and I don't disagree. I think that this whole system, the whole matrix of our economy and our interwoven economy around the world is a gentleman's agreement or gentle person's agreement that things are going to work a certain way. And that's great until they don't, whether it's via a natural incident that takes place, or it's by the wrongdoing or the purposeful doing of actors who want that not to be the case. And I think we see in our current situation that there are actors that can impose their will upon millions of people at a time based on being able to push through new policies or destructive policies or whatever they could be that affect millions of people at a time. We see in the stock market what's been happening recently. And so your understanding of the matrix, how things work, completely gets flipped, right? What was up is now down, or whatever the case may be. How prices may be affected going forward. What you once could afford, you can no longer afford, right? So that's like a more tangible example of what you're saying, where the matrix is basically a field of behavior that we've all kind of bought into, and it's based on certain technological and economic and social factors that we've all kind of said, okay, we'll play by those rules, until someone with real, or some people with real power decide that they don't want to, and they can change that, right? So from that standpoint, I get how, and I've said in different conversations, how even our Constitution is essentially an agreement that under certain circumstances, these things will occur in this way until somebody decides that, well, I decide not to play by those rules, then your constitution is worthless, right? Mm-hmm. I have a real passion for this whole idea of rules and norms being re-examined because they're not effective in the world in which we live today. So I agree with you on that. But your far-reaching example of how it will work is a doomsday scenario, which could happen, and we should be aware of it. But I think there's much more value to playing somewhere in the middle where you're preparing for a future that isn't the doomsday scenario, but you have some level of preparation if things go sideways.
And you still got to play the matrix, but Los Angeles, 7.9 earthquake. You don't have access to your cash anymore. Your property value is done. So you can be here with no access to food, water. So your economy, your net worth is according to today is zero. Your value are the resources that you can deploy. That's your value. So we think of net worth. It's this magical thing that, like you said, it's a gentleman's agreement about, how much my house is worth, how much my stocks are worth. And again, I'm sitting pretty good based on the analysis from my financial advisor. But after the tariff thing, I didn't take that big of a hit. And then remembering what you said about the property values in the fire, it just struck me randomly that there is no spoon.
It is killing me that now that you have found some economic impact in your life, that you're lamenting the tariffs that we told you in previous episodes were a tax on consumers. And you're like, oh, that's okay, because our GDP is too much consumer oriented anyway. But now
I don't actually have a problem with I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with the tariffs and the resetting. I don't have a problem with the dip in my net worth. My understanding of my net worth changed because like like when you gave the example of the stock market rebounding after the Great Recession and after COVID, I'm not concerned about that. The economy will balance itself out. What really came to my attention is how much I have no control over my net worth, whether it's the tariffs, if they don't go away, whether it's another pandemic or a natural disaster or war, any of those things, like my ability to deploy resources is totally outside of my control. And so I need to focus on building those skills so that I can have resources that I can deploy in both worlds, in the apocalyptic world and in today's world. So maybe I'll get into woodworking and maybe I'll sell some things, but at least I know how to build some stuff. Maybe I'll get into some, local farming so I can sell stuff at the farmer's market. So I'm looking to figure out what resources can I deploy in the Matrix that I can also deploy in Mad Max. That's what I'm thinking.
There's I really want to try and bring this to a more practical kind of solution-oriented discussion about what to do with that in mind. And you bring up an important topic, Darin, that I was listening to an event that John Hope Bryant, I don't know if you guys are familiar with John Hope Bryant. He has a organization called Project Hope. And I don't know if he's a billionaire, but he's a very accomplished and wealthy Black entrepreneur, and he's connected with a lot of on this 3-hour live broadcast that he did. He had everybody from TD Jakes to Martin Luther King's daughter, to Andrew Young, to A-Rod, to there was just an endless stream of people who have done well financially, talking about what the future, particularly for Black America, but also for just America in general, in terms of how to create value and take control of your financial future, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the people, and he was part of the previous Trump administration, I believe, but he was saying, listen, if you want to know where the white space is for the future, if you're trying to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, so to speak, it's not in technology and all that kind of stuff. You need to know about that stuff. But what are people going to need? To your point, Darin, people are going to need plumbers. They're going to need electricians. They're going to need people who know how to work with steel and things like real skilled trades, right? Skilled trades is where the economic future is going to be, because the generation of those people who have been doing that are coming to the end of their useful life in terms of being in that, and the replacement for those people is very low. So you look at the idea that that we lived with, that everyone should go to college, get a degree, get a job as a lawyer or as in technology, whatever. AI is going to interrupt a lot of that stuff going forward. Now, do we need to know about that? Yes. But what will people always need? People are always going to need skilled trades, right? And you're going to be able to make a very good middle-class living, and maybe if you're entrepreneurial enough, even a higher class living without a college degree, if you can take hold and become a master or even proficient in some of these skilled trades. So that's one way to look at your idea about that you just brought up in your last statement.
And I know Ron had shared that couple, or somebody had shared in the chat, that couple that really started that were really part of the big fire.
Our journey. That was our friend from San Francisco.
And so when I was watching their podcast or whatever it was and reading about it, I kept thinking, but when happens when your investments tank? And that just kept coming back to me over and over and over again, because it was all around the same time that, looking at their podcast, my financial advisor review, the impact on the economy, I started trying to figure out, I'm in a good space. I could even retire early, but that is based on this hope that everything goes according to plan. So if I pop out of the job market now, and in 5 years things go really, really bad, me popping back into the job market, I'm not going to be able to command the rate that I get now. So I need to have skills that will, like Nick said, I'll be able to go, yeah, I may be 65, but I can fix your plumbing, and I can still get paid. So those are the things that I'm thinking of. So you got to play in the matrix, because it consumes the world. But I want to be on the ship. I don't want to be in the pod.
I mean, I think that there's a couple problems I have with this line of thinking. The first one is when I hear people talk about the value of working class, blue collar, plumbers, carpenters. They always say that other people should do it while their kids go to elite private universities. So I always think, I'm not going to pay attention to what you say. I'm going to pay attention to what you're doing with your family. And these people are sending their kids to Ivy League schools, USC's, UCLA's, Stanford's, and then turning around and telling people, you don't have to go here. You could be a plumber. So I find that a little bit of a classism that always is distasteful, especially when it's directed towards minority communities. So that bothers me on the surface. The problem also, the second problem I have, coming back to you, Darin, is you're looking at a scenario where it's worst case. What happens in the worst case? If you are taking your eye off the ball in your mainline career of being excellent and achieving what you can in your career to learn how to be a carpenter or to be a plumber, you are not focused on your main source of revenue production to learn some other skill, which is going to hurt you in the marketplace. Now, I understand that, you and I specifically are we're in the autumn of our careers. So I understand how, where we are, but the bottom line is these are still, our prime earning years. And if I want to make sure that I am valuable and not laid off, I need to kick butt at work. I can't do some apprenticeship on how to be a plumber when I need reports that have to get done and budgets that need to be managed and people that need to be managed. I've got to do my main revenue producing job. If in your situation, maybe I need to just write a check to somebody and I pay for the skill that I need and that I don't have. But I got to keep making money in my primary job.
And for a lot of people, that is probably the case. But, as I've excelled in my career, I've earned 3 advanced degrees, did 10 years in the military. So there's always time, and simultaneously excelling in my primary career and building a reputation and increasing my value in earning potential. So there's time while raising a family. So there's always time. It's just a matter of what your priorities are. So I'm not saying, don't go all in on your primary source. I'm just saying be strategic at the use of your time. I joined the military in 2012 and, did 10 years there, earned a master's in teaching, master's in cybersecurity, and a doctorate during that time, and excelled at work. Mm-hmm. Mind you, at the same time, I was also working 2 jobs. So I don't buy that you can't do it all. I just say that you just have to prioritize what's important. Now, we didn't take vacations every year. We took vacations every other year. And so it was just, what we prioritized because I was looking long term. Mm-hmm. I'm like, you know what? I need to have a backup plan. So I went into cybersecurity and I did cybersecurity in the military. So just in case stuff didn't work out in education, I always had a backup plan. So mm-hmm. I don't disagree that you need to focus in on your primary vocation, but I'm saying that, keeping an eye, it's sort of like having a business on the side. You start hustling on the side, getting your side hustle. What I'm saying is be more intentional with whatever that is to make sure that it can bring value to today and to a future that is not like today.
Right. If you had a 21-year-old right now, an 18-year-old, would you tell them to go to a 4-year college and get a degree in data analytics or cybersecurity, or would you tell them to go be a plumber?
I would tell them to get their degree, but also get some real practical application in cybersecurity so they can make money while they're in school.
Yeah, but that means you're going all in on the technical field and the degree path, not the agrarian route or the trade.
They don't have enough social capital yet to move in that direction. So this is not something that an 18-year-old would do per se. An electrical engineer, I would definitely say you should get your electrician because those are more closely related. So I would say, yes, you're an electrical engineer, but you should, because those are parallel types of field. So if you're going to be an electrical engineer, yeah, you should take some electrician's classes because now you have increased your vocation as well as your intellectual. So there are some parallels where you can connect. If you're going into mechanical engineering, then maybe look at automotive. So there are a few fields where you can essentially be in both areas, be in the academic arena as well as being in more of the hands-on. But you have to be in one of those fields in order for it to work. You can't be a philosophy major and a plumber because it's just not enough crossover.
Yeah, but you also just said you can be a mechanical engineer and work at Jiffy Lube.
No, not Jiffy Lube, but you can take an automotive class. You can go to Abram Friedman Occupational Center and take a class on automotive repair on the weekends. Yeah, you can do that.
Right. Listen, we're gonna kind of start landing this issue a little bit. We'll go around one more time. I just want to say one thing for my parting shot on this subject, and that is that, Ron, I think for people at our stage of life, obviously it's a different consideration than if you have children at this stage of life, or you yourself are in your late teens, early 20s, or even in your 30s, and you're looking for how to be productive. Keep in mind that everybody doesn't start from the same economic kind of set of conditions, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody's child isn't necessarily, or every person themselves isn't destined for a 4-year or Ivy League education. It's great if you are and you have the resources to put toward that. Some people have to make a more practical decision about what I'm going to do with my time and my talents, or my child's time and talent, and maybe getting into a trade situation for some people could be part of the ladder that leads you on to the next, the next building block. Could be getting a degree later on or in some other way. But in this, I'll lean into Darin's analogy of there is no spoon even more so, that the whole higher education system, as we are seeing, is its own matrix. It doesn't offer any promises to the people who come through there that the time and the expense that you put toward this and the debt that you incur as a result is going to result in you having a six-figure salary, $1 million life, or whatever the case may be. So there are some trade-offs with that as well. And we're seeing that more and more, even with the decisions that higher educational institutions are making in light of current political conditions. So there are no guarantees out there. And for everybody who feels that they may want to make a good middle-class job and they're looking for where the green grass is, sometimes for some people, that's an option. And so that's why I would say it's worthy of consideration, and not just saying, get a degree, get into this matrix, and you're going to be okay. Mm-hmm. So last two parting shots, Ron, then we'll give it back to Darin to finish us up.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why I'm like really passionate on this topic, and that's because there was nothing in my family's history that would indicate that I would go to college and get a degree, and certainly not an advanced degree. So I was one that got through the cracks in the system to get advanced education and all of the blessings that has afforded us. I agree with you that there's no guarantee. In fact, as you were talking about it, I visualized this woman in my grad school class, and she was just there. She never really contributed. She got the same piece of paper that I got, and my classmates got, the ones we kicked butt and worked hard and tried to really learn and apply the technology degree that we pursued. But she just showed up, got the degree, walked across stage, and she was, whatever. The difference is that she didn't have passion and grit to use the tools that she was given and exposed to. So you're right. The academic institution means nothing once you graduate. I just interviewed two candidates this past week for entry-level positions at our company. And the reason that we're going to hire both of them is because they have hunger. And if it had been some privileged kids that didn't show any desire to really figure out, how can I help this company? How can I learn? What are the things that make entry-level people successful? What can I do? If they didn't exhibit that, it'd be like, you're just another college degreed person that doesn't know what's going on in the world. So I do agree with you, but I also reject the fact that not everyone can get a degree, because I'm living proof that it's out there for you if you just, make it a priority.
It's not just can, it should, right? Theoretically, anybody can get a degree. It's like, should everybody get a degree? And is there real value in that? But I'm not going to go back into it, Darin. It's your table to finish us off.
Two final points. I have 6 degrees, 30 years experience in education and engineering, and my electrician makes more than I do. So, and he didn't go to college. So, there are ways in which you can do well. And then, like I said, what really brought this on was, me, looking at my net worth and going, okay, I'm good. I'm insulated from the whole tariff thing. I'm going to be fine. And then that fire video with that couple, and, just the conversations we had earlier about people, whose houses burned down and they can't get the insurance to replace it. So even though that they had this house and equity worth a certain amount, it's not worth that anymore. And that made me realize that there is no spoon. If you're chasing after net worth and you're not securing resources that play in both the matrix and the apocalyptic world, then you are not doing yourself or your family a favor, because we are a 7.8 earthquake here in LA away from your net worth not helping you and your family.
Darin, and I'm sorry, we got to go just a little bit longer. Darin, you keep using that 7.9 earthquake, trope. Does that mean that I can go to Palisades or Altadena today and pick up me a whole bunch of free homes because the land's now worthless because we have the equivalent?
No, I'm just saying, like, if the earthquake happens tomorrow and
what happened in Palisades and
well, that was a localized area. I'm talking about a devastating earthquake like the ones they've been having in other places in the world, in Myanmar, where you can't get resources. Remember, Ron, like you talked about before about the traffic, we only have a couple of ways in and out of LA. Like the freeways are done. There's nothing coming in. And after 3 or 4 days, this ain't New Orleans. This is
I get the 3 or 4 days society breaks down.
And so you need to have something of, and again, it can play in both worlds. So like if I'm going to be doing woodworking, maybe I'll start doing custom woodworking and making some money on the side in the matrix. But in case there's something else, I can also build a shelter for my family. So I'm just saying that for me, there is no spoon helped me to realize that my net worth is nothing. My value is what's important. The resources that I can bring to bear on any day, at any time, in any circumstance. Today, if I wanted to buy a car, I could. But on another day, I may need water. And that may be the only thing I need. And so I need to be able to put my efforts into my value, which in the matrix is my net worth.
Dude, it doesn't matter. Look, if you become the best carpenter and the best farmer in the world, okay, in your world where society is broken down, somebody's going to sit on a mountain or 100 yards away with an AR-15 and a scope and say, I'm going to take what you have because my family needs it.
Yeah, but I'm the builder. So they're not going to take, they may not kill me because I bring a value. They don't want
you have water. You have resources that I want.
I have resources, I have access, or I can generate electricity because I know how.
You've got water. I'll take your water. And by the way, I see that you killed a deer in the woods. I'll take your deer. And you're an extra mouth to feed, so I'm going to kill you.
All right. Listen. We've picked apart Darin's doomsday scenario here, and I don't know that we're going to solve it because I think there's, as with most things, there are points to be made, in both directions. So let's just hope that the doomsday scenario does not occur anytime soon, because I think we're all going to, based on our probable hand working skills, we're probably all going to be in deep doo-doo. So let's just hope that doesn't happen. But for those of you guys who are listening and watching and checking us out, we'd love to hear what you think about this idea of playing in the matrix or playing around the matrix and doing your own thing and figuring how you can make your life better, and how really not just you as an individual, but how as a collective society we should be looking at what we're presented with and what your thoughts are. We'd love to hear your feedback. I'm sure many of you will agree with Darin. Some of you will feel like, who is this guy and who's running? Who am I for whatever reason? But we're definitely open to hearing what your feedback is. So leave a comment and certainly like and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to engage with you that way. So before we get out of here, though, Darin, let's give your parting shot subject for today and tell us what's on your mind with that.
And my wife hit me to this podcast called LA in a Minute. And the chat is the link is in the show notes. There's this guy who goes through, he's a fascinating look into LA's history. I found out some interesting thing about Skid Row and its origins. It's just a really interesting podcast. He talks about different aspects, little known aspects about the history of Los Angeles. She hit me onto it and I was just fascinated by it. So check it out. It's LA in a Minute.
Great. And we'll leave a link to that in the show notes. As he said, we'll leave a link to that Matrix clip and also the John Hope Bryant broadcast that I highly recommend. So if you guys have any Any thoughts about that, or want to know about that? Also, Darin referred to the idea of FIRE, and FIRE is a concept that many of you may be aware of called financial independence, retire early, which is an idea that many people are trying to aspire to, which is figuring out how to get to the place with your financial independence will allow you to retire early. In other words, not have to work for money. And I think we're all kind of interested in being in a place in life where we don't have to work for money. You work because you want to. You do the things that bring you joy, and whether that's profit making or not. So anyway, with that, we will wrap things up. Ron, I know you have plenty more to say on this topic, but believe me, I'm sure we'll touch on this in some way in future episodes. But for now, for now, we'll wrap it up. We appreciate you guys checking out, and be with us next time because we've got issues, so you don't have to. We'll see you guys next time.